Hey guys, Double Dave 22 here, and this is going to be a video on making adjustments heads up. So I know this is cash, but it should help for tournaments too when you do get heads up. And some tournaments online do end up getting heads up pretty deep. Even like 40, 50 big lines is enough to like apply a lot of these concepts. So let's just dive right in. I played this guy for about an hour and a half during my session of MTTs, but he was a more recreational player, and I spotted him at 2-4. So I wanted to jump right in, and usually this money comes in pretty quickly, but this guy was playing differently than the normal guys I run into. Heads up on 8 at 8 is usually where I'm looking for them, but he was playing a bit tighter, and it was different to have to adjust in a different sort of way. I don't have to bluff as often. I value bet huge and just get instantly paid off by these guys. But this guy was playing a little more snug, not necessarily better, but just tighter. So I needed to start bluffing more, which I didn't really have to do a lot, but like in the past. But now against this particular guy, I was trying to show him bluffs, and I just physically couldn't do it because he kept folding. So we're going to jump right into it. I want to see where some of my mistakes are because I know I was making some, and I want to know what adjustments I need to start making to beat these people heads up. I mean, I'm doing all right heads up. I'm not playing a ton. It's hard to find people, and there's 6 max tables, so people will sit down. I won't get a lot of hands in, but just over a small sample, 2,000 hands, I'm up almost $800, and that's nothing really, obviously, but it's 14 big blinds per 100, which is good. And I've played a lot of heads up in my career, so not having a huge sample isn't a big deal for you guys to learn something from me during this video. So let's jump in. And I was 2.5xing, which I don't want to go too much into, but generally my strategy is the more they start calling, the bigger I make it. And if they're really bad and really cally, I just 3x. If they're a better player and they're folding a little too much, then I'll just min. But other than that, I'm just going to stick as a standard at 2.5. And just right away, right off the bat, I open, get called. 4-3-10, generally good dry board to c-bet. I'm not getting better to fold by any means, but I am getting a little bit of value from hands like 5-6, 5-7, 7-6, ace-2, ace-5, and occasionally like jack-queen, might call one, 2 overs and backdoor straight draw. So I am getting some value, and then I want hands like king-7 off to just fold. I mean, unless I'm checking back and calling and then hoping the board breaks out. Like, there is a good amount of protection necessary. It's not mandatory by any means, but I also have 2 backdoor straight draws and 2 overs. So in general, this is just going to be a spot where I start by c-betting. And early in the match, usually on dry boards, I c-bet smaller. And when the board's more dynamic, I c-bet bigger, just as a standard. So that's where we are for now. And he does check call. 7's a pretty bad card because now 5-6, 6-7, 5-7 all have reason to stay in. I'm just going to be giving up on this card, and the 6 is no good either. He bets small, and I could turn my hand into a bluff. I will have some 5x here. I will play, I'm opening all 10 5s, including offsuits, so whether or not I check that on the turn is up for debate. I'm just wondering what 5x I bet flop and check turn with. Maybe just pocket 5 is a big one. 7-5 I might play this way. 6-5 I'm always betting turn. 5-4 and 5-3. 5-3 I probably play this way as well. And I have a lot of combos of 5-3. I don't know if I have every combo. Real quick, I am opening. My raise first in here is 81%. As a standard heads up, you can go higher, you can go lower depending on your opponent, but just to show you what that looks like, 80% of hands. Basically, I'm opening any 2 suited cards. It's something like this. I'm folding kind of the worst offsuits. as you can see. So what was I talking about? 5-3. Yeah, I mean I don't really touch 5-3 off, although I can start to include these hands that can make straights. Depending on how my opponent is playing, I might want to start opening 85. I think that's a pretty standard heads up opening percentage, just like most hands, just folding the very bottom end. Um, which becomes interesting when both players are playing this way and you get like the 8 deuce 3 flop, which generally there's hardly any two pair combinations on. But anyway, so I'm just thinking about what 5x I can have and what bluffs, or what my value to bluff ratio would be here. And I think if I start raising hands like this, I'm raising way too often. I did call just strictly for information. It was worth it. I saw that he doesn't check raise ace 10, top pair, top kicker on a dry board. So I know that his check raises are either more polarized or they're just way stronger. Or maybe they're weighted towards draws. I don't know. But we just know that he doesn't include top pairs in his check raise range. So it's something we can definitely consider in the future. So my opening range is about 80-85%, and then my defending ranges vary widely, but my cold call, as you can see, is 52%. So I'm calling, a wide range of hands. Of course, it doesn't include my 3-bets, which I 3-bet fairly linearly. I'm 3-betting 15%, but it's not all going to be just the top 15% of hands. Something like this. Let's take out some amount of hands. So we're cold calling. I mean, something like this. I don't know exactly what it's going to end up being. I'm going to end up calling some of these occasionally, not 3-betting them every single time. So something like this, and it could even be wider. I could be defending a lot, like all of my queen X, all of my suited hands, but some of them are going to be 3-bets. So I end up 3-betting around 14%, which could definitely be higher and could include hands like this. But I choose to 3-bet hands that play a little bit better. Even like 10-6 suited would be a better 3-bet in my mind. But we do completely miss and check fold. He checks back on the king queen 3, which I expect him to c-bet most of the time here. His c-bet numbers are, let's see if we can find it, 76%. So that's going to include a lot of middle pairs too. So if he's c-betting all of his king X and queen X, then he's going to miss this board when he checks back. So I'm going to take a stab here, and I probably am going to bet twice just to try to get his random jack X and 10X to fold by the river. So I can't just bet this once, and I think 2 streets is good to bluff there. I do open the 2-4 suited, flop a flush with a redraw. I think I just lean towards betting here. I mean, there's so many one club hand cards, combinations of hands in his range here that I'm getting just a ton of value, and I need to protect my hand from a hand like, king 10, 10 of clubs. We want value on protection against those types of hands. So tons of reasons to bet, and I think betting big here is good. He's going to have a lot of 2 pairs, some sets, some straights, and like I said, single club hands. So just massive amounts of value to get here. I could probably even start by going bigger, but it's not a big deal. He does just fold, which is unfortunate. We defend the 6-5 offsuit, flop middle pair. He had been doing this, which I don't know what it means. I'm trying to figure this one out as we go here. He just starts potting it, and I don't know what it means because I never had a hand strong enough to call down. So this is the first time I saw it. Obviously, I'm not folding middle pair in a gut shot. Now, in a situation where people are checking back a lot of their middle pairs, which I said this guy particularly wasn't, so this is kind of just a reflex of mine, but against this guy it might not be as good, but against someone like me who checks back a lot, let's look at my c-bet percentage. I mean, my c-bet's kind of low. It could definitely use, I could definitely be finding spots to c-bet a little bit more, but I'm checking back a lot of my showdown value type hands here, my weaker 8x, my middle strength 5s and stuff, and occasionally 4x, but when someone checks back the middle pair a lot, and then they bet the flop, and then the middle card pairs, that means they're not going to have it as often. So it's a good spot. It's going to be better for my range when I call this flop and the 5 hits. So I'm going to want to bluff here a ton, which means I want to develop a good solid leading range, which includes some draws, some 5x, of course. I don't know if I'm just going to start leading my 8x. It doesn't seem really worth it. I'm going to have plenty of other ways to balance my leading range here. So I'm not going to be leading my whole range, but I am going to be leading a lot of my draws here and my 5x to balance it off. So I do lead, and he calls. I'm just going to bet again. I mean, I don't see any reason I'm going to be bluffing this card a lot. So nice and big, 3/4 seems good. And he does call, and he's got ace-8. So the one time we did see him pot it, it was top pair, top kicker. So we'll keep that in mind. We open the 5-7, we flop it straight. This is directly after, and I just thought I was stacking him here, but he did end up folding. But it's a mandatory bet. I mean, there's all sorts of hands that connect with this board, including any 2-over cards that aren't king or ace-x. So like jack 10, queen 10, queen jack, all those are going to continue. Every 7x he has in his range, some 10x, 5x. It's just like a massive amount of hands that continue. Okay, we open ace-2, ace of clubs. I mean, I could check this back just to have some ace-x in my range, some ace of clubs x in my check back range, but I don't really have a lot of showdown value. So I might check back a hand like ace-x6 or ace-x3. Ace-x8 just seems way too strong to check back. Ace-x, I mean ace of diamonds, 6, that type of thing. So at this point, I don't really have any showdown value, so I think I need to start betting. And sizing shouldn't matter. I said on more dynamic boards I go bigger, so I should go bigger, but his stack size is getting low that I didn't want to make it 15 and face a check raise, but at the end of the day, I'm still just getting it in, so it didn't matter. But that's the reason why I made it smaller. I don't know if it was a good reason or not. He did have a pretty vast limping range, 27%, so... And when he's got a raising range and a limping range, I'm always going to assume that his limp range is weaker. So 4x is my standard, and I'm going to do that with all sorts of playable hands. Now, ace, jack, ace this is a spot where I'm not really getting a whole ton of value from worse. I mean, I have one of the jacks, and it's going to be hard for him to have a jack, and that's really the main thing I get value from. Other than that, he has probably some king 10 and king queen and stuff like that. Queen 10, but he did limp, so I think he's just as completely zero, like, 7, 8 off way too often here. So I am going to check and try to let him hit something. But he does check back. The 6 brings the flush draw. He'll hit the 6 occasionally. And I do end up betting, and seeing him make some other plays later on makes me want to come back to this and call. But I just thought he was calling with all his 6x and all his flush draws and all his jack x. I didn't think he was raising anything that I beat, really. He could be semi-bluffing with a flush draw and play it this way, but I doubt it. I think if he's got 2 clubs, he's just going to call for fear I have an ace. So I did end up making kind of an exploitable fold here, but after seeing him just raise anytime he hit any sort of pair, and then in the future you'll see, I would go back and call this and just see what happens in the river. So that was a bit of a tight fold, and again, not sure. And then he check raises me on. This is a relatively dry board, and yes, I have 0 equity, but I am going to see bet these king x monotone textures pretty much the most. So. Just a little c-bet here. I mean, this isn't... it is dry, relatively speaking. There's no flush draw, and he does have a 3-bet range, so, his better ace-x and, I guess, like, aces and pocket jacks and stuff, like, aren't going to be in his range. So, just little things like that, and I have backdoor spades, so plenty of reason to bet. We defend and completely miss, and this is a spot where I can bluff rivers. I do want to get him off of, if I get him off of any 2 cards that are better than mine, like, it seems like a win. And he is going to have total air a lot on this texture, so I expect him to bet at 10 at some point. I expect him, he seems to bet every time he hits a pair, so I don't think he's got anything but a high card and I think if I just bet, he's going to fold a lot. So I think this is a little bit of a missed opportunity. And I save my bets for the river in these spots because he's going to have a lot of like 7-8, 9-8, 3-4 stuff like that. That's just going to call and then potentially bluff us. But they might just passively check it down and then fold rivers. So there's going to be a lot of times when, even a hand like King 4 might call because they think they're good on the turn, and they still have another card that they can hit. But once the river comes and there's no more cards, so I just have a high success rate in bluffing rivers against these weaker players. All right, you'll see this happen a lot where I open a small pair and I just don't put any more money in the pot. And 4, 10, 9, we're not getting called by worse, and we've got some showdown value, so I'm going to try to get there. And I could potentially bluff this river, but he's got plenty of ace high in his range. I don't know if he's just automatically going to bet his ace X here, and if he does, then it's definitely a bluff, but it's not a huge deal either way. So I think that would be my one spot to bet, would be the river. Flop I don't like, turn I definitely don't like, so he did have the queen 7. Who knows if he folds that? He does limp. We give up. I filtered the hands here just to hands that we saw flops on. There wasn't a lot of pre-flop battling going on because he just wasn't 3-betting, so I didn't really need to include it, and I just showed you guys my opening range and defending ranges, so you don't need to see my folds either. So we open ace 9, he calls. I sometimes check back my weaker ace X here, but ace 9 is just a little too strong. There's a ton of draws. Again, I usually go bigger on dynamic boards, and this is a dynamic board, but I wasn't playing perfectly. If I was, I would probably go a little bit bigger here. Completely miss and give up. Now I can start to include hands like this in my 3-bet range. They could fit into either, depending on the strategy that I want to play. I can 3-bet or I can call. It's clearly going to be profitable call, and then 3-betting all just depends on the way that our opponent is playing. He's not 4-betting, so we're kind of always seeing a flop when we 3-bet. He's calling 63% of 3-bets, so that's kind of high. Mine is 42%, and I'm 4-betting a fair amount, which makes me want to 3-bet just a little bit more linearly when he's playing this way. When he's playing more of a, I mean, yes, I like to have playable hands as well, but in general, I just like to have more hands that dominate. So like all my Broadway type hands, if he's calling 60%, that's a massive amount when he's opening. What is his raise percent? 48%. So just as a real quick glance at that, he's opening 48%, and then he's calling, what did I say, 63% of that. So 48 times 0.6, so 30% of hands. And I don't know what he does with aces. He hasn't 4-bet. Maybe he didn't get aces or kings, and I don't know. But this is like generally, it might end up being something like this. But this is generally going to be his like defend to 3-bets range. And as you can see, 10-8 suited is like the worst hand, and it doesn't dominate. It dominates one hand. So I mean, I'd rather have better ace X. I'd rather have hands like king queen and king jack, which dominate a ton of these suited kings and suited queens and stuff. So my 3-bet range should consist of more of dominating type hands in a more linear fashion, so my higher end, rather than just polarizing my range. So here we go again with his potting, and I call flop. I just fold the turn. I honestly didn't know what to do in this spot. The only time we've seen him do this was with ace 8 on a similar texture, and he can easily have all the overpairs. You can have 2 pairs, you can have straights. I don't really have any, there's not a ton of safe river cards. I mean, any card that doesn't pair the board between 3 and 9 puts some sort of annoying card on. I don't think I can call anyway, and all overcards are kind of tricky when he bets again, and he's sizing it so that he's going to be shoving over. So either I call twice on like reasonable runouts, or I just kind of give it in now. And I didn't know how he was reacting, and if he's doing this too much, I can just wait till I have a slightly better hand and just get them all pretty easily. So potentially a weak fold there, but not knowing enough at this point in the match, I think it's fine. And this was really weird too. I mean, I think I made a mistake. He makes it 64, 3x pot. I think I should just jam here. I mean, he is going to have plenty of draws. He'll have some two pairs, but I don't know if he's defending. What is his cold call? 67 is pretty high. 67% with a 5% 3-bet, so we can take away like the very top end. Whatever that ends up being, I don't know. And then 67. I just want to see if that reaches like the offsuit queen fours and stuff. Yeah, I mean, it barely does. Queen four. It doesn't really hit 10-4. And then he'll have. I mean, this is mainly like the sticking point probably. Like whether he has queen four off in his defending range, and he would elect to do this. But if he doesn't, then, I mean, he does have some better queen X. But there's a ton of draws. There's a ton of diamond draws, and there's a ton of straight draws. And I think my hand is just good. So I might just want to shove here. I decided to call and then just, like, get it in on non-diamond, like, king or 9 turns. But he did turn a diamond. Did check, which I don't even know what that means, but I'm not putting in another bet. I'm just going to see what happens. And then the board 4 straights, and he bets big. So, or four flushes. So pretty easy fold at this point. But the main thing is, like, should we just be getting in on this flop? And I guess, I mean, I've never seen him do anything like this before, and I have to assume that his range has a lot of draws, and there's not a ton of two pairs. I don't think he does this with a set. So like, it's like queen 10. Which I have some equity against, and then it's draws and occasionally like king queen, and maybe like ace queen as well, which we're in some trouble against. So I don't know. I have no idea how he reacts in a spot like this. So I just wanted to call and see what the turn was and see what happens. It was a very expensive play, but I don't know. Maybe I don't really want to go much more into it. Yeah. I think I've summed it up as well as I can. Always going to c-bet those dry textures. And without a diamond, even with king high on a 10 unpaired board, I'm just going to fold. Now, he does another lead here, and in general, it was tricky because I wasn't sure what to make of his leading range. And this wasn't a 3x lead, and we know that exists. So I decided just to peel 1 with my gut shot and potential overs and see what happens. I don't think it's going to be too bad to do so. We pick up a pair, and he ends up leading again, but not full pot. So, I mean, there are some hands that I beat still. I beat Jack 10, I beat 9-10. If he does have a hand like just Ace 10 as well, like he might just be doing this. I've got a couple outs to a hand that I'm never folding if the river is jack or if the river is a 10. It's a king is marginal, so I don't know what I'd do on a king, but it depends on his sizing. Probably end up having to fold, but on a jack or 10, I'm very easily calling down, so I do get a percentage of this pot back, even if I'm like never continuing on rivers that I don't improve on. But that said, I think he slows down a lot, and there's, like I said, jack 10, 9-10. Those are the main ones that I think I do fine against. And he does check, fortunately, and I think it's a little too thin to get any value, so I do check back, and he has the 9-10. So I think he should be following through with a river bet, but you know, because he's got the 10 of diamonds, that's just has a massive amount of blocking potential, and the 9 blocks a lot of my two pairs. I'm gonna have jack 9 less and queen 9 less. So I think he should have followed through there, but this shows us that he's leading and betting. I mean, he's leading with middle pair for pot, which is interesting, and then he's betting turn when he's got showdown value and a draw, which is also interesting. It just makes me want to not fold any of my top pairs in the future. I do end up c-betting here, and again, like not playing perfectly. This is on the bigger side, but 2 overs, backdoor diamond draw. on a texture that misses him a lot. I think it's fine. I don't want to give him incentive to raise on these boards. I don't know how often he is, but if I bet smaller, he might be more inclined to raise. I just have 0 equity, and I'm not going to be putting any more bets in this. I think this hand gets really ugly very quickly. I end up betting this turn mostly for protection, a little bit of value. I think he bets the turn with all his Jack X and King X, so I think I have the best hand a lot. I don't want to give 2 overcards free equity. And then I occasionally get a little bit of value if he has a 3, or if he's got something like ace 4, ace 2, or like 6, 7, hands like that might check call if he's not playing very well. So I did end up betting, and he does check raise small, which didn't make any sense to me. So I decided to peel one off. And I'm probably having the initial equity just to hit a 5 or 7 anyway. Getting 3.8 to 1. So I do call, and the river's pretty bad. It gets queen 10 there. And a lot of his bluffs kind of get there, his 9-10s and stuff. So I do end up just giving up on this river. You can make a case for calling, maybe just because his line doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and I still beat hands like 6, 7, and ace 4. But the most likely hand he would have on this turn when he check raises would be like a flush draw, and the turn didn't bring a new flush draw, so it's kind of wacky to call down on that run out. He does min 3-bet here, which is definitely scary, but we've got a great hand. Just considering his 3-bet range is so small, like this just shows the mistake that he's making. He's saying, hey, I've got a top 5% hand. Here's the smallest amount to call where I can give you that information, and then I'm going to put the max amount in post-flop after you're able to see 3 of the cards. But unfortunately, I didn't hit anything. Okay, on the 6-4 deuce, I mean, against his limping range, I guess he hits this a little bit better than I do. I'm not going to be raising hands like 6-2, 6-4. I probably am raising all my pairs here, so I do connect in that fashion. I'm going to have plenty of flush draws and overpairs and stuff. So, I mean, it's not a board that completely misses me. I just lack a lot of the 2 pairs and top pairs that he's going to have. So I wouldn't be totally against just giving up, but with 2 overs and a board that potentially misses him a fair amount, I think I'm just going to place a c-bet in, see what happens. I mean, it's a good turn for us against like kind of the fishier, stabbier type players. I like checking here. We can look at versus miss c-bet. He's betting 40% of the time, which is only 2 out of 5. One pot in position, he's betting a third of the time. I kind of have nothing to base this off of other than maybe my stats. Let's see. Versus miss c-bet, I'm not betting very often, so I don't really stab as often as other people do. So he's stabbing a little higher. This is slightly different. Okay. I mean, some guys I'm automatically going to check here. I think he's got a lot of ace 6, ace 4, ace 2, unless he's raising those, in which case I'm pretty much in the clear here. Just to bet and get value. But I think my default is just going to be to check call and then see what happens on rivers. But there's nothing horribly wrong with betting. And if I had a slightly better ace, I think it makes a little more sense. So we do get a big bet out of him. I am going to call, of course. And the river is an 8. I mean, I beat some ace X, ace 3, ace 5, ace 7, ace 9. And he doesn't have ace Jack plus. So it's more likely that he's got the 4 that I mentioned rather than the 2 pair 4 here. But he also can have hands like 5, 7 and 6, 8 and all sorts of other 2 pairs. But he also can have plenty of bluffs here. He can have all sorts of missed hearts, missed spades, just random 8x that's betting for no reason. We've seen him make some funky bets. I just don't see how it can ever fold, especially when he half pots it. So I do end up calling, and he did flop a straight. So 5-3 off is in his limp call range. good to know that he connects on these boards a little more than I thought. So my initial instinct of this being a better board for him was right, but I can't do anything other than call twice on this turn. I mean, I could do something like bet fold turn. Seems okay. Bet twice with the intentions of folding if he puts in a raise at any point. Because I still think I get calls from all those ace-x that I mentioned, and maybe he'll occasionally hero call me with 6x or something like 7-8 might call. So all in all, I mean, I've a couple different options, and it's going to be player dependent. And maybe against a guy who's not stabbing as often, I may want to just start by betting this if he's a little more stationy. So his 1-1 saw flop. That's going to show his aggression factor rather. His went to showdown here was it's only 24. So he's not incredibly cally, as you can see. Mine's 29. So I don't know. If his 1-1 saw flop is high and his went to showdown is low, that means he's putting in more bets and not getting to as many showdowns. So that makes me lean towards my check call a little bit more as well. But that'll be the end of part 1 here. And just to sum up some adjustments I want to be making. It's hard to say at this point because we haven't seen a ton of showdowns, but in general, he's kind of like just putting in a lot of chips anytime he hits any sort of pair, whether that's a raise or a pot-sized bet. So I do want to let him make those bets and probably slow play a little bit more against a guy like this when I have a big hand. So I think that's good for now, and I'll be back for part 2. See ya.